Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Coding Specs Python tutorial series. As you can see from the title, today is all about mistakes we often make in Python and how to avoid them. These, unfortunately, affect both beginners and pros alike. So without any further ado, let's dive straight into the video. The first mistake we often make is misusing default arguments. I'm sure that many of you would look at this piece of code on the left-hand side and think that nothing is wrong. And technically, you'd be right, because if I run the code and call the function on the right-hand side without specifying an argument, the function will correctly run and return a list containing the word hello. But now, if I call the function again, hang on a minute. The list now contains the word hello twice. And again, it now has 3 elements. What happens here is that the default argument is initialized only the first time we run our code, whereas each additional time we call the function, this is simply adding to the pre-existing list instead of generating a new one each time. Luckily, we can solve this easily by modifying the function as you see here. In this case, we never modify the default argument, but rather force the function to create a new empty list each time. Therefore, if I now run the script and call our function without specifying an argument, it works correctly. But then it will keep on working correctly each time I call it. The second error concerns while loops. I already mentioned this error during my tutorial on while loops, which by the way you can access through the link on your screen and in the video description. However, it is so common that I felt obliged to include the error in this list. Simply put, the error consists in creating infinite while loops. This can be achieved in many ways, but by far the most common mistake, and one I have personally made many times, has been to forget to modify the counter inside the while loop. In this case, on the left-hand side, you can see that the loop will continue forever because the value of I will never reach 0. This can be easily corrected by increasing the counter by 1 with each iteration. For example, by saying I plus equals 1. And now, if we run our code, you can see that the while loop will loop 10 times and then come to a stop. The third mistake once again involves iterations. In particular, in this example, we are deleting elements from a list while iterating through it. Since the number of iterations is calculated on the initial length of the list, and we are deleting elements as we go along, we will clearly reach a point where the iteration index will go out of range. So if we run our code, you can see that we get an index error where the list index is out of range. A few people may be stuck at this point, but once again, a simple solution exists. As we can see here, on the left-hand side, the code is no longer deleting items from the list, but rather using a list comprehension to overwrite the original list with a new one made up of only even numbers. By the way, if you want to check out my tutorial on list comprehensions, I'll leave a link to it in the top right-hand corner of your screen and in the description below. Now then, before we move on to our last 2 common Python mistakes, let's take a quick break, and in the meantime, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and join the Coding Specs community for many more videos and Python challenges. Now then, let's move on to our 4th mistake, and that is importing a module with an asterisk such as this. Here, we are forcing the code to import all the functions contained within the module, and in the case of large libraries, this can make your code really slow and inefficient. So, a much simpler way would be either to import only the functions you actually need by saying from NumPy import, for example, arange, linspace, and sqrt, or else import the module as a whole, as we've done many times before, by saying import NumPy. Then we can call individual functions contained within the NumPy library as and when needed. So please remember that while using an asterisk to force all the functions in a module to load into our code isn't necessarily a mistake as such, it is far from optimal and therefore can sometimes slow your code down unnecessarily. I would strongly suggest that you use either of the other two methods I've shown you here. The last mistake we will look at today occurs while editing a file. Normally, we would write something along the lines of file equals open, followed by the file name and W, which means we want to write to the file. Then we would say file.write, whatever it is we want to write inside of it, followed by file.close. I'm sure many of you would think that there's actually nothing wrong with this code. However, what happens if an error occurs while writing to the file, so in line 5? Well, our code will stop and the file will actually never be closed. So this could actually lead, in the worst cases, to the file becoming corrupted, and that is certainly something you'd want to avoid. So a simple way of fixing this mistake would be to use the with syntax. This can be written easily as with open filename.txt, w as file. Then we say file.write hello, followed by file.close. This way, should anything happen while writing to the file, the code would exit the with statement and the file would remain closed, thus avoiding any damage. Having seen this last mistake and how to avoid it, we have now come to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, then please make sure to show your support by subscribing to the channel. As always, you can find a link to my Python tutorial series and coding challenges in the top right-hand corner of your screen and in the video description, so don't forget to check those out. Once again, thank you all for watching, and until next time, happy coding!